Welcome into another edition of the Old North State Sports Show. Folks, if you're a Panthers fan tuned into this, you're probably wondering, hey, you continue to reference this new show, this new name. When's it going to change? And maybe just people that subscribe to the channel. It's coming soon. I'm predicting probably end of March into April. We'll be able to solidify the name, the branding. We'll update all of our socials, and the new show will kick off. But as we prepare to take baby steps to get there, folks, we are excited as you can now participate in the show. One of the things about me and growing in this audience and just everything when I started this podcast 2 years ago, I had visions of hitting these checkpoints and milestones. I didn't know when and how I would get there, but we're getting close. And so now I want you guys to be able to call into the show. So the first thing we're going to do is open up a phone line, and the number's right here on the podcast on YouTube. If you can watch on Spotify where you're watching, or if you're listening, it's 910-679-6927. And for the audio only people, I'll say it again, 910-679-6927. You can now participate in the show. It's a voicemail system to start off. So you can call in, leave me a voicemail, ask me a question, give me a take on something, whatever it is. Try to keep it clean so that I don't have to bleep stuff out because we are a clean show. If you do say some bad stuff, we'll figure it out. But I want you guys to be able to participate. So I love looking at the comments, engaging with you guys on the YouTube comments, but I want to be able to take it to another level. So this is the first step, and then I'm in the process as we do this whole rebrand to look at how do I actually get to incorporate this, and I think I've got a path forward onto the live stream because, to be honest, taking live calls and interacting with sports fans is really where I want to go. It's hard for me just based off of life and personal, obligations to be able to invite a lot of people on and stay coordinated. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to open up the phone lines and let you guys just call in as you want. So I'm excited about that. But enough of me rambling. Let's actually get into some Panthers news today. We've not yet had a caller. I'll just say that as I record this. So first one, waiting for the first one to call. I did test it out last night, so it does work. Let's get into the talk around running backs. And this continues to be a discussion. We bounce around from edge, wide receiver, tight end, defensive line, safety, and we kind of rotate between themes for the Carolina Panthers. Running back is one that's coming up now because we're just getting closer and closer to legal tampering, free agency, bonuses. That's the important thing to understand. When this new league year kicks off again, in legal tampering, 10th through the 12th, free agency, new calendar year on the 12th, everything starts right around my birthday. Always fun. I have that and March Madness. Lots of stuff to track. But shortly after this new calendar year kicks off, you have roster bonuses that are going to be due for players. And so, in the situation that we are now, you're going to have teams having to make a decision on a player and deciding if they're going to pay them their bonus. And so that means they could get cut, you could get restructured. All that comes into play. If you're a big fan of the Kansas City Chiefs, maybe Travis Kelce, you've probably heard that the Kansas City Chiefs are giving him a deadline of the 14th of March. That's because his roster bonus is due on the 15th. And all of these things have implications into the cap. So I personally expect some news to come out of this, some cuts. Is it Shy Tuttle? But let's get into running backs because that's what we're here to talk about is running backs. I do think Miles Sanders potentially could be done here. Had a great finish. I know a lot of people in the locker room were excited for him. Dave Canales was excited for him. But it feels like the writing is on the wall. And as we sit here, the follow-up question to, okay, if Miles Sanders is gone, Raheem Blackshear, if you don't bring him back, who's going to be running back two? And how are the Panthers going to address that? And now we're having players on other teams getting cut. We're starting to look at the draft, figure out who is Dave Canales and Dan Morgan going to want to bring in. So one of the names that has been popped up is Raheem Mostert, out of former Miami Dolphin, out of Miami. Personally, I don't have a strong opinion either way. I do think the Panthers, as we know, Dave Canales, he looked at Rashad Penny last year in training camp, and things, just didn't work out and parted ways mutually. So I do think he's going to keep his options open. We know Jonathan Brooks likely not even going to play this year. That's not a surprise to anyone. I mean, I wouldn't expect him to come back. So you really have to figure out. Chuba Hubbard's great, but that 1-2 punch of someone, and I know Chuba Hubbard likes to take the load. He does have, I'm not going to say a proneness to injury, but we know he's battled some things with his knee. He missed some time at the end of the year. I'm not concerned about any of those things, but it's good to have an extra back in the rotation, and then potentially for kick return, possibly even punt return, but primarily as a kick returner as you look at what Raheem Blackshear did. So for me, I think we'll continue to hear rumors of players and ties and who's it going to be. And I also think running back through the draft is always on the table. You look at the number of draft picks that the Carolina Panthers have, and I think that is absolutely in play. Fans may not like it. I mean, you could always draft later, fourth, fifth round. There's value there. We've seen it from other teams and or going the free agency route. Now, part of the reason I started to talk about running backs and bringing this up in conversation is I saw online, and I don't even remember the account, but someone wanted to or phrased a question about drafting running backs, but then the philosophy was like, well, what do you think Pete Carroll and Dave Canales have in common? Like, how much do you think Dave Canales leans into Pete Carroll's ways and what he learned through Pete Carroll? And for me, I'm here to say, like, I think we should separate those ideas. And I understand that Dave Canales talked. I don't know how often they'll get to talk now that Pete Carroll's an active head coach. Pete Carroll's son was on the team as a pass game coordinator. We know there was a lot of open communication, bouncing things off of him. But I think what Panthers fans are trying to do is put Dave Canales in a box. And hey, this is who Dave Canales is. The blueprint is what happened in Seattle. However, Pete Carroll did things is exactly how Dave Canales is going to do things. And I don't think that's the case. And I don't think we can do that. And I don't think that's a good path forward because Dave Canales is his own person. He's his own coach. He's figuring things out as he goes. He relies and he asks questions. But I think we gotta separate the two. And sure, I'd love for there's a lot of similarities if you want to compare the two. I'd love to have the culture that they built in Seattle here in Carolina. But I think the way that they go about it and how we get there is going to be different. And so I understand fans want to just latch on, have a data point. It's very similar to what people did when they tried to give Dave Canales a little bit more credit. And I'm not saying he didn't deserve it, but they give Dave Canales more credit for developing Geno, for playing with Russell Wilson, Baker Mayfield. Now, Baker, yes. But some of these guys that, like, dude, he was a wide receivers coach. He was the quarterback's coach. Like, limited roles, wasn't even the offensive coordinator, but we just like latch as fans and try to find this connection this way that fits into this idea of who Canales is because it makes us feel better. It makes us rationalize, but we don't know. And so the question really derived from running backs, and Pete Carroll liked to draft running backs. Do we think Dave Canales is going to do the same? And I don't know. And so I think when you're trying to put Dave in a corner and say, this is how he's going to do it, this is how he's going to think, when you sit back and try to rely on what you think you know, might not necessarily be the case. And speaking of what we think we know, how about what we thought we would know in year 2 of Ejiro Evero, and at the end of year 2, him potentially leaving, and Dave Canales makes the decision to keep Ejiro Evero on the staff for year 3 for the defensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers. And so year 3 for Ejiro Evero, speaking of decisions, that was definitely not a popular decision, I don't think, amongst fans. Maybe so in the locker room. Dave Canales spoke highly of Ejiro Evero. He feels like it's going to work. But what are your expectations for year 3 with the Carolina Panthers and Ejiro Evero? Coming off worst defense, Carolina Panthers team history, most points allowed in NFL history, top 5 in rushing yards allowed in a single season. Injuries were concerning. The scheme is concerning. Player and personnel, and some of which Ejiro Evero has asked for, guys that he's played with, guys that he's coached, guys that he wanted to draft. What are your thoughts? heading into this year. I think it's an important year. I feel like there's going to be more pressure, whether it's there or not. And we don't know the type of, I mean, kind of we're starting to see it. I mean, Dave Canales benched Bryce Young after week 2, following a game in which at the post game presser, he said, yeah, he's our quarterback moving forward. And then you follow that up after watching film and he benches him. He's not afraid, man. And so I think there is going to be pressure for Ejiro Evero to perform. We've seen a lot of changes with the defensive staff already. I think 3 to 4 firings, mutual partings, 3 to 4 hirings along the way. But my expectations for this year, man, you got to at least be average. It feels like it's not a lot, but in a way it does feel like a lot. You just need to be an average football team in defense heading into next year. And I think that's going to really set up the future because, I mean, next year, if Ejiro ever performs well, this year, I think he'll get some head coaching opportunities. If not, I mean, this is it. We're going to have a total reset on the defensive side of the ball. You worry that if the defense does not perform well, do you waste a year, a potential waste of a year with Bryce Young and company? I don't know. This team needs to be competitive in the NFC South. Every year we like to say the NFC South is weak. The NFC South is winnable. The Panthers haven't won it in almost 10 years now. So I just want to see us put together a competitive season and get over the finish line and actually be competing in December, heading into January for the NFC South. Anyways, folks, that's going to do it for today's episode. This is Carolina Dad. Y'all have a good one.